Good evening, everybody. Good evening. How are you? Who is joining me live here on YouTube? And who is with me on Facebook? Good evening, everybody. It's good to be here. Good to be back here today. Our last live was on Sunday. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you had some gems to work with, to go with, to begin to put into practice. And I think I did ask you guys to do something at our last live video. How many people were able to do it? How many people were able to write down those things that they have noticed, those patterns that they have noticed that keep playing up? Last week we spoke about, the internal operating system and some of the things that we have experienced from childhood, from negative experiences, from difficult experiences, difficult relationships, and we are still carrying on with them, even in our everyday lives. So I hope you found that useful. I hope you're able to use some of the points that were talked about, some of the things that we raised. I hope you've been able to put that into practice through your week. All right. I always tell people that every therapist should have a therapist. Is important. Actually, I would recommend if you're working with any counselor, they should let you know who their counselor is because we're human beings, and even for those of us that are counselors, we do also go through difficult times, and sometimes we need somebody to be able to speak to, and we must have a counselor that we can speak to as well. And I was in that place in this last week, where I needed to speak to my counselor, and I needed to, say, look, help me out with some things here. So that was good. And some of the things that I actually even raised last week, I also had to write down in my journal some of those things that I've noticed that are coming up over and over again that I need to deal with, because we're all work in progress, guys. We're all work in progress. Nobody can claim to have arrived and to say they've, mastered it all. We're all work in progress, and we keep putting one foot in front of the other day by day, becoming better and better for ourselves. All right, great. So let us jump right into today's topic. If you're on Facebook, say hi. If you're on YouTube, say hi. To be nice to see those who are joining us today. So let's start off with our topic today. What's our topic today? Have you ever left, you've left one relationship because, you were with that person, you felt things were not working out, you felt like, you know, this person is emotionally unavailable, whether it's a guy, whether it's a girl, and then you think you healed from that relationship, maybe in another 1 year, 18 months, 24 months, you get into another relationship, or maybe in 6 months after the breakup, hopefully not, but 6 months after the breakup, you get into another relationship, only to realize that, hang on, this feels oddly familiar. Yes, it's a different person, it's a different voice, it's a different body, but you're going through the exact same emotional stress. Your first relationship that you were in, maybe the guy, your ex was controlling. Now this person is not controlling. He doesn't shout at you, but somehow you still feel small around them. Maybe the ex that you had never gave you clarity. about anything that you guys were doing. You always seemed as if you had to do a guesswork with her or do a guesswork with him. Nothing was ever clear as to where you were, where you were going. Now, this person that you're with is also keeping you in the let's see how it goes season 7. And you're wondering what is happening here. You begin to think to yourself and ask yourself the question, can love really be this hard? Is it really that difficult to be able to find someone that I can build a healthy relationship with? Or are you the one who is repeatedly choosing what feels familiar even when it's unhealthy? So today we'll be talking about what I call same person, different bodies. And you're welcome to today's live. For those of you who might not know, maybe you're joining for the first time or you're watching this video sometime later, my name is Muduni, and I help young adults to prepare for wholesome and intentional and healthy relationships. And today's conversation is especially for singles, for people who are in dating relationships, for people who are in talking situations, what talking stages of their relationships, for people who may even be in situationships, people who may be tired of saying, how do I always end up with this kind of person? Please share this video. It's live. Please share it with your friends. Send the links to your friends. People who you think may benefit from from what we're about to discuss tonight. So, like I said earlier on, same person, different bodies. What does this really mean? Yes, the name has changed. Yes, the face has changed. The packaging is probably even different. Maybe the first person you dated, maybe your ex was tall, dark, and handsome. Or maybe your ex was, slim, figure eight, fair, beautiful. But now you are with a tall person. You are with somebody who is a little plump, but you still feel the same pains that you felt in that relationship, you still feel it in this. And you're beginning to ask yourself, what is going on? Somehow, the two relationships seem oddly similar. You still have the anxious feelings, you still feel confused, you still feel like you're not enough in this relationship, you still feel like, is there something that I should be doing better? You still feel emotionally drained, you still feel like you haven't really gotten it yet. This is the time to begin to ask yourself, why are people like this? Or you begin to ask, what pattern am I participating in? So it's not about the people that you're getting into a relationship with. It's about the pattern that you are attracting. It's about the pattern that you see and you see as familiar, even though it is unhealthy. And a lot of times, I tell people that sometimes this happens as a result of, the traumas that you've been through. And those traumas are things that you're living through the trauma. So you're trauma bonding with people who sort of understand your trauma, or people who are also traumatized in themselves, and somehow you will find a common ground. And you think that you're building a relationship until things begin to go really difficult. So let's look at some points as to how these things actually happen. Familiar does not always mean that it is healthy. So, like I said earlier on, a lot of times we get into unhealthy relationships. We may not call it unhealthy at the time, because I want to imagine, for example, that if you actually knew that something was not good for you, if you knew that this thing is not good for you, you most likely would not get involved with it. But sometimes, most of the time, it actually doesn't look unhealthy from the outset until you get into it. And then it looks like something that you've done before that started well but didn't end well. And you think to yourself, okay, it started well. Maybe this one too will start well and have a better ending. But unfortunately, the same scenario plays out. So we have to be cautious and look at what it is that we are being attracted to. What is that thing that looks familiar? Sometimes some people will say, I really don't know why I like her, but there's just something. There's just something about this person that I like. There's just something about this person that I love. But sometimes that something might be a wound that is recognizing another wound, like I said earlier on, trauma bonding. So, if, for example, you grew up always trying to prove yourself, you may feel strangely drawn to people who make you feel like you have to work hard to be chosen. And that makes sense, right? Because if you had to always, prove that you were good enough to get the grades and you got the grades, if you had to be, you had to prove yourself to rise up the ranks in your organization, you had to prove yourself, you had to put in the work to prove yourself, and you were able to prove yourself, then you would always believe that even in your relationship, you feel like you need to do the hard work to be chosen. And so you're used to that, you know, emotional inconsistency. You're used to having to put in work for anyone to accept you for who you are, even when you may not even feel like doing the work, even when you may not feel like putting in so much, even when you may feel like, you just want to be at ease, you just want to rest, but you feel like you need to be chosen, you need to be accepted, and so you decide to put in the work all the same. If chaos is familiar, peace may always feel suspicious. So sometimes people say, oh, we have chemistry. There's so much chemistry between the two of us, and so I believe that we're meant to be together. But my dear, I'm sorry to break it to you. Chemistry is not always compatibility. You might have chemistry, doesn't mean that you're meant to be together. Sometimes it's just anxiety wearing perfume. I'll say that again. Sometimes it's just anxiety wearing perfume. So it's not every butterfly that is flying in your stomach that is romance. Some butterflies are your body saying, this looks like the last trauma subscription we forgot to cancel. So what could that be? Let's think about it. What is that thing that feels familiar, but you know that it's not healthy? Think about it in your life today. Are you in that relationship? Are you in a relationship with that person that feels like this feels oddly like the last relationship I was in? I know it's not the same person, but somehow I'm having the same experience. Could this be same person, same body, but different persons? Could it be that it looks like you are just trauma bonding with someone who is wounded and you are also wounded and both of you have found common ground? That's something to think about because it's already built and founded on an unhealthy on unhealthy things, and so it's not likely gonna last. It's not likely gonna last. Let's look at another point. Your spec may be a pattern in disguise. So I know a lot of us, I mean, I had my list of kind of guy that I wanted, someone who was nice, chilled, quiet, not lousy, blah, 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 tall, dark, handsome, and the list goes on and on and on. And there's nothing wrong in having those, at least you have a list to say, this is who I want and the person I want to be with. Nothing wrong with that. But again, what emotional experience do you keep choosing? Even with all of this spec, if you have all of this spec in a person, what's the emotional experience that you're choosing in that person? So are you saying you're choosing spec, or are you really choosing the emotional experience? Because you might be using your choice of spec to cover up the unhealthy emotional experience that you're actually going through. Because your real spec may not really be about the height and the beauty and all of that. It's really about the things that are going on the inside of the person. It's really about the things that are going on your inside. And as we talk about this, this topic, as we look at this thing of, um, as we look at this topic, I just seem to wonder, same person, different bodies. I just seem to wonder whether sometimes I know people are not, it's not, um, yes, we've said, you can be dating the same person in a different body and all of that. And we've talked about, your spec that might not look like it. And we've talked about what might be familiar, but is not healthy. But it's not always the case. So that's one, I just want to put that out there. That I'm not saying that it's every situation where it feels like this is a similar situation that it's unhealthy. But what I also want to point out, and I hope that you can see, is that this actually starts from you. It starts from you because you are the one doing the choosing, whether you're the guy or the girl. The girl, you're the one who is saying yes to the guy who has come to ask you out. And for the guy, you are the one who has decided to go ask a girl out, or maybe vice versa, as it rocks your boat. But whatever the case may be, you are the one who has made the decision to step out there. So, what are you seeing in that person? What lens are you using to look at the people that you're choosing? That looks as though you keep choosing the same person, but in different bodies. What's the lens? What's the color of the lens? I remember that a few weeks ago, I dropped a video where I called it, "What's the color of your trauma?" And I remember that my daughter was talking to me about that video, that she found it quite interesting. But really and truly, what's the color of the lens that you're looking at to to make your decisions on who it is that you want to be with? Is it clear? Are your lens clear, or are they fuzzy, or are your lens broken and cracked so that you're not able to see clearly, or is your lens, you know, shaded, dark, heavy shades that only allows you to maybe see clearly when you are outside inside the sun? What lens are you using to look at people, to look at the people that you want to be with and the decision that you're making? Sometimes we feel that if we get into the same type of relationship, maybe, maybe healing will come in some way or shape or form. But healing doesn't come by repeating the same cycle. Can you imagine if, for example, you did a series of things that now led to you having an ailment? Let's just take something basic. Maybe you scratched yourself, or you exposed yourself to, for those of my brothers and sisters in Nigeria, you exposed yourself, or in Africa, to mosquitoes. And for you did that for a period of time, and then you didn't take any precautions. You were just like, yeah, that's fine. And then you then eventually got malaria, and then you feel like, oh, okay, maybe the solution is to expose myself to mosquitoes again. I mean, even as I'm saying it, I'm sure it sounds stupid to you. Like, why would you really want to do that? But that's what we do sometimes in our relationships. We go through a relationship of 6 months, of 1 year, with somebody, expose ourselves to someone who hasn't treated us right. We've exposed ourselves to someone who has caused us emotional damage, and and all forms of red flags and orange flags and all colors of flags have been thrown up, and you've had a turbulent experience up until the point where you broke off the relationship. And then you decide to try again, and you get right back into the same type of relationship, thinking that maybe it will be different this time, with hoping that maybe with this person healing will come. And so what I'm hoping that you can see from this, like I said earlier on, is that of course repeating the same cycle is not going to bring you healing. But then what it also tells you is that you need healing, is that healing is necessary for you to go through. And you need to be able to take that step. You need to be able to tell yourself, I need to find healing to become a better person so that I can be in a healthy relationship. And healing can take so many forms and pictures and shades. But choose to be healed. Choose to be better. Choose to want to do relationships differently and not just to repeat the same cycle, thinking that hopefully some things will change. Some people are not your soulmate. They are just your receipt course. And until you learn, the question paper will keep coming with different names. It's interesting that I use this example because I'm back to being a student. And so I know very much what that means. Some people are not your soulmate. Sometimes I know that we could have had certain experiences with people and you feel like, I can't let this person go. Yes, I feel that it's wrong, but there are just certain things that we've done together, and I just don't feel like I can let it go. But unfortunately, if you don't pass that test, you're not likely going to be able to move on to the next one. You don't break a cycle by changing other people. You break it by changing the patterns. And the patterns are from you. So you break it by changing the patterns that you are putting out. You break it by finding healing. And sometimes people say, oh, you can see the red flags. They're red after all. Red is bright, it's a color that you can see anywhere. But sometimes red flags are not always loud. Red flags are not always dramatic. It's not always about that the person cheated on you, or there was some abuse, or it's a public embarrassment, or it's violence. Of course, those are red flags, but sometimes they can be very subtle. Very, very subtle. And then you think like, oh, okay, yeah, that's not such a big deal. Yeah, maybe we can get maybe he can get away with that, maybe she can get away with that. For example, you're with someone who never takes responsibilities for their actions. No matter what it is, no matter how it is that you come together in that situation, they will never take responsibility. They always find a way to deflect. They always find a way to shift it onto someone else. That's subtle. Or someone who makes you guilty for having your standards. That's subtle. Or someone who doesn't want to have serious conversations. That's subtle. And I smile because I've experienced all of these things in the I've not been in so many relationships, but in relationships that I've been in, I've experienced it. Experienced when people are saying one thing and doing another. That's subtle. They say one thing to you, but they actually don't do what they say. That's subtle. or someone who is only available when it is convenient for them. That's subtle because there's nothing convenient about relationships, guys. Nothing convenient about relationships. It's always a sacrifice. It's always having to do things, sometimes you do things that are not convenient, things that are not easy, but because you know that it's important to the success of your relationship. So it's important to be able to know the loud red flags, but to also know that sometimes they are the subtle ones, and these subtle ones need to also be identified, and these subtle ones need to be picked up. And as we talk about finding these subtle red flags in other people, in the people that you're in a relationship with, or somebody that you're deciding, should I be with this person? Are these red flags that you yourself are putting out? Are you somebody who also is not peaceful? Or are you somebody who also avoids having serious conversations? Are you somebody who just wants the benefits of relationships but you don't want commitment? So as you ask it of the other person, of your partner or a friend that you're contemplating on getting into a relationship with, you also need to be asking the same questions about yourself. Because when healthy meets healthy, then we have happy. When healthy meets healthy, then we have happy. But when healthy meets unhealthy, then we have unhappy. And that's not what we want. Here we want to have happy, wholesome, healthy relationships. And it's possible, guys. It is possible. It's possible if we take on some of these things that we're learning. It's possible if join me in my webinar where we'll be breaking down these things a lot more and, putting them in minute details for you to be able to understand and work with and run with, for this webinar that we're planning to have next month. Well, in that webinar, we'll be looking at a lot of all these other issues in an expansive way. And might even have, one or two other people that would come together to speak and to let us know the importance of being able to build these things and being able to develop these types of attitude and behavior and becoming. And I know that, it's not always a walk in the park, to want to become and want to look inward. You know, introspection is not something that we're familiar with. It's not something we like to do. To be able to sit down and think and look inside and ask yourself really, really deep questions and even find the places where you might be at fault and begin to do things to correct it. Sometimes that's difficult to do. We don't want to do it, but it's the only way, guys. I mean, think about your jobs, for example. Think about what you do. Think about your business. Think about how you want to be better at your job. You have a supervisor who appraises you and tells you, oh, okay, yes, you did this, but you could have done this better. Think about how you can improve on your work. And then with you in your office space, you're thinking of how you can improve your work, do better so that maybe you can, get a promotion, get some acknowledgements, get some recognition for your work. Or maybe you run your own business and you're constantly thinking of how your business can improve. You're constantly thinking of how you can reach your people, reach your customers, and give them better value for what they're bringing to you, better value for the money you want to collect from them. You keep thinking of how to tweak it and how to do it better. Why do we struggle to do that in our relationships? We seem to give our relationships little effort. Meanwhile, the relationship is the foundation of every other aspect of your life. Because if your relationship is healthy and happy, you'll be able to thrive at work. You'll be able to thrive in your business. You'll be able to thrive with other friendships and relationships, and with colleagues and church members and mosque and your friends from wherever. You'll be able to thrive in other aspects of our lives. But we don't give that much attention to our relationships. We think, oh, okay, the relationship is fine, it will sort itself out. I've worked in organizations where for there was an organization I worked with, and for 1 week straight, every day, my colleague came to the office and he was looking worn out from the beginning of the day. And at a point, I had to ask him, I was like, guy, what's going on? Eventually, he had to tell me that it was issues he was having with his wife. It would always affect every aspect of our lives if your relationship is not intact. Because our relationships is not just about what we do with our physical bodies, it's also what we do with our emotions. And our emotions are energy in motion, and we're a ball of it. We're a ball of emotions. And if our emotions are not right, the energy that we're going to be putting out is going to be negative energy, and it will affect everything else. Just think about the waves on a sea and how it's all clear, blue, beautiful waves. And then you put in that beautiful body of water that is giving you some nice ripples, and then put a drop of thick red color. It's gonna spoil the whole thing. Everything will become red. Everything will become tinted. And that's what happens when that thing that we think is small, the relationship that you think is small but is the anchor, when we don't do it right, it affects everything else. It affects everything else. I've dropped the link in the description box for you to register for our webinar. I hope you do. We look forward to seeing you there. We're really preparing towards it and getting ready for you guys to join that webinar. We look forward to having you here. Um, there's limited time in what we can say here, and so we hope to see you at the webinar. Like I said, please share this on Facebook and on Instagram as well at Transformed You, on YouTube at Wholesome Living 07, and share us with as many people as you can. And thank you so much for being here tonight. We really do appreciate your time. We really do appreciate you coming here. Thank you. Thank you. God bless you and have a good rest of the day. Bye for now.